I'm Josh Pate. This is the Late Kick. You see it written there, wall-to-wall college football. There is no off-season. We kind of whisper the word around here, and we are in Coral Gables, Florida, on the campus of the University of Miami. And we came here for a reason. We wanted to get a vibe of the campus. We wanted to check in on a lot of our friends down here, but most importantly, we wanted to sit down with the head man, Mario Cristobal, leader of this program, entering year 2. Everyone remembers what did and didn't happen last year, and we got him to sit down for a wide-ranging conversation about a multitude of topics that are on everyone's mind. Die-hard Canes fans, agnostic fans that don't care about Miami one way or the other, or maybe even the haters. We talked about all that with him, some pieces that were here last year that aren't here anymore. More importantly, maybe some pieces that weren't here last year that are in the building, and what it's actually going to take that U, that logo, synonymous with greatness a generation ago, back to prominence. Here is our extended sit-down with Mario Cristobal, head coach of the Miami Hurricanes. Pate State Speaker Series is in Coral Gables, Florida. Josh Pate alongside Miami head man Mario Cristobal, kind enough to open up the entire facility. We felt more at home here than we feel in Nashville. So first off, appreciate it. Secondly, it's June. Some of the more casual-minded out there would call this the off-season. We don't really use that word because there's a ton of buzz in the building right now. I mean, just describe for folks who really don't get to see behind the scenes, first off, what the energy is like. You're entering the heart of recruiting season. You got summer workouts happening that are player-led. You got a lot of strength and conditioning stuff happening. Like, what is the vibe when you walk into the office right now?
Well, it's strong. It's a lot of real momentum, genuine momentum, because, we just signed the best class in our history. And we returned a core of really strong-minded, tough, high-character guys that get it. And I think we all know the month of June has become a beast in college football, right? There is no rest. I mean, you're going 7 days a week, and at least that's what it amounts to over here, I'm sure, for most places. So like you mentioned, you have player workouts going on. You've got your prospect camps. You've got your youth league camps. It just doesn't stop. So there's a lot of different kinds of energy going on, but it's all about like the hard work part. It's all about community give back work, academic obligations. It's a lot of work, but also there's a feeling of, man, let's go. Let's keep pushing this thing, because right now we feel like we have a really good group of guys in the building that get it.
Now, what's funny is, like, public doesn't get to see this, but I stood right up on a railing just off camera here, and I watched you shake like 1,000 kids' hands yesterday. No bathroom break, so you soldiered through it. I mean, it's nice, though, when you get to open these doors up and you get a lot of the youth camps and youth participation from down here, but you just talked about that signing class. I don't want to gloss over that. Like, we ranked them number 7 in the country at 24/7 Sports, but sometimes from the outside, yeah, I see the stars, I see the rankings, but those are numbers to me.
Right.
I didn't scout the players, I didn't recruit them, you did. You had them in the building, and it was really the first full cycle that you guys got. What struck me first and foremost when we got here a couple of days ago is how much energy there is in the building, specifically about the true freshman class, which goes a long way to me in validating that, at least from the so far point of view, you guys feel like you really hit on that class. So, I mean, walk me through it. You got a couple of freshman tackles I see out here who look like space aliens, and I don't even know if they're legal adults yet. So what did you just sign?
I mean, it was at the forefront of task at hand. Now, when you take on a job, and especially, I guess nothing is too late in the cycle, but when you take it on at that point in time, you've got to assess where the program is, right? And in college football, you're either arriving at a new place because a place had flourished and moved on, or because it needs work, it needs repair. And certainly Miami was a place that needed repair. For decades, Miami had dominated the NFL draft. And in essence, when you dominate the NFL draft, you have dominated National Signing Day. So analyzing it right away, as a staff, we felt that we had to put in a lot of work to make sure that the culture that was brought in matched with the types of players that we're recruiting and the types of players that are in the building. So it's almost a 3-pronged attack on this stuff. And so we went right at it, and the line of scrimmage was at a premium. And you saw, the aliens you referred to, they do have birth certificates and social security numbers, albeit, they really are unique, not only because of their stature, but because of their ability, their capacity to handle like large workloads and to push. And ironically, you would expect a freshman class to sit back and wait for a leader to arise among them or whatnot. And the alphas are being alphas. They're doing a really good job pushing. And we've recruited them for a long time, and we were very real. We were very, very honest. We said, look, we're super excited. We're building a championship football program, rebuilding a championship football program. And it didn't happen overnight where, things had gotten to where they were. So it's not going to be an overnight fix, but we need tough-minded individuals that will not flinch, will not blink when things are going to get tough. Because at first, like anything else that has to be rebuilt, there's some painful steps that you cannot skip. So we went right at it. We stuck with that. That has never changed. So they took on, I would say the honor of becoming a Miami Hurricane, and they have not disappointed. They eat more than any group of human beings I've ever seen in my life. The food bill is through the roof right now. But their energy, the extra time put in, you saw a couple guys shooting out the jugs machines earlier today. They're football junkies. And myself, our staff, I want to be around people where this is the thing. It is the priority, and so far, so good.
You're talking about installing the right mindset. You inherit what you inherit when you take over a program. What percentage of the roster had the right mindset when you got here a year and a half, 2 years ago?
Well, it's hard to tell. It is a clash of cultures, I can say that. I love to grind. I do. I make no bones about it. I do. I like putting in hours, and I like being around people that like to put in time and effort and have intensity behind it. And our culture brings a lot of that. And I think we walked into a culture that was, it wasn't that. Okay, it's being honest, and at the same time, want to be respectful of anyone and anything that comes before you, because I believe that's important. It's just different. It's two different philosophies, and it's two different cultures. So that collision isn't a kind and cuddly one. That one's going to come with some pushback, but plenty of cooperation. It's going to come with attrition at some point in time. But the percentage that, it's hard. It's hard. It wasn't large, but it wasn't zero.
Enough. It was big enough.
It was enough to establish a core.
Right.
Let's just say that. A core that you can build off of, and at the same time, add some legitimate high-level talent and start building it and piecing it together the right way. Because you got to stack up the pieces in a way where you're still developing and you're not overstacking just talent.
I think a lot of folks would be just fascinated, as much as you can go into detail, of what it's like when you first take a job. In your case, you get to Miami. Like I said, you've got what you've got. You're talking about sort of the oil and water clash of we're going to do it one way, maybe you're used to doing it another way. You're not throwing any predecessor under the bus, but how in your face do you have to get, not just with your roster, but with a lot of people, because you talk a lot about not just fixing the downstairs where we are on this field, but fixing the upstairs too. I know you well enough to know you don't shy away from confrontation when it's needed, when it even may sound mild-mannered right now, but not all the time. But at the same time, you know that you got to have enough to go to war with in year one. So how uncomfortable but necessary is that, I guess?
I don't think it's ever uncomfortable, because you're genuine and you're real. And I still think the greatest form of respect you could give someone is to be honest with them and give them the truth, whether they want to hear it or not. That's the best thing you could do by someone, for someone. And the first thing I wanted to do was walk in the building, and I want to walk into the locker room when no one was there, because I wanted to see the type of pride that was taken in one's own house. Because that'll tell you a lot, and right there, right away, there's a lot of work to be done. And with that, you want to see what type of physical condition your team is in, because if you're a college athlete, come on, man, you're still a young guy. I'm getting a little bit older, not too old, trying to hang with you in the weight room is something else. But, there's pride in what you are physically as well as mentally. How you do in the classroom. There's a level of pride in your culture where if it's really culture, if it's really a strong and a very just a championship level culture, how you do anything is how you do everything. There is no light switch that, okay, I'm going to turn it on when I'm practicing. I'm going to shut it down when I got to go to class, or when I have to make an appointment, or when I have to be courteous and be respectful to someone. So the attack was, when I would say the assessment, and then the directives were all geared towards culture, knowing that talent acquisition was going to take a whole year. You're not going to be able to change things by much. So that's where we poured ourselves into. And I'm probably going off on a couple different tangents, but that's what it's like. You have to say goodbye. That's number one, and that's tough. You have to say goodbye to people that were really good to you. A situation that I'll always be extremely grateful for. I mean, and we take a lot of pride in. When we walked in to the University of Oregon with Coach Willie Taggart, you know, Oregon was coming off a 4-8 season, and talent acquisition was struggling. And a few years later, you're playing for a Rose Bowl and you win a conference and you go to successive conference games. So that's hard to leave. It's hard to leave, but there was always one, and this was that one. And part of it, and I'll say a part that wasn't part of it. The part that wasn't part of it, it was that I'm from here.
Yeah.
The part that is really strongly ingrained in why, and the reasons why I came back, is I played here. I wore the U. I've got 11 plus, zippers on my body due to surgeries, having played at the University of Miami. The community completely embraced us, and we turned the entire mindset of the city, the community of South Florida, and then nationally. And so it was a game changer in my life. And so my full belief is that Miami done the right way is the best place on the planet. So that's why we're back, and back after having the experience at Oregon, having the experience at Alabama, at Rutgers, at FIU, all those places. So when you come in, you want to bring in people. A lot of your staff members all of a sudden got a head job or got coordinator opportunities. Even GAs and analysts became position coaches. So you've taken 4 or 5 years to assemble a really strong team, and all of a sudden, it's gone.
Right.
But then you've got 4 days before the first signing day, but you have no staff members in the house, and you got to say hello to your new team, and you got to figure out what's got to stay, what's got to go, and you got to figure out current staff members. There's no handbook, and no one should feel bad for anybody having to do that, right? We're compensated for doing that.
Yeah, they don't feel bad for it.
And they shouldn't. It's just that your multitasking skills are going to be put to the test, and you better buckle up, and you better be ready for the right kind of Cuban coffee to keep you going 24/7.
Right. And I've experienced that down here a little bit, and will before we leave here. So you're talking about what Miami was.
Right.
You're talking about what not might be, but just what you think Miami will be again.
Yes, sir.
And flat out, there are a lot of folks out there who don't believe that's possible anymore. There are a lot of folks who just believe, by however they define it, college football has evolved, and so some of the programs that once were can't be again. And I don't necessarily fall in that category, but I'm telling you it's a very popular talking point out there. I know to a certain extent in your line of work, you just have to block that out. But do you just let a little bit of it be an IV drip? Do you just let maybe 2% of that in to understand that, there are folks out here who totally think I'm full of it. Like they totally think this is BS. There's no way we're going to be able to do this. Because when I walked in here yesterday, you said, hey, you said, how you doing? You said, this is it. I'm not going anywhere. This is it. It either works here or it doesn't work. Like, what's it like to maybe turn on the radio or maybe refresh Twitter every now and then and just see folks, in some cases, totally doubt that this is possible?
That's like foreign languages to me. You got to realize I was raised by 2 parents that met here, came over from Cuba, learned the language, worked 2 jobs at day into the night, went to night school to learn the language, and made sure we understand what the principles of working hard and taking care of your business really are. So we weren't silver spoon-fed kids. We weren't coddled or given the soft and easy way. We were taught how to grind and how to work, and that carried over to a high school head coach who was the best of the best, and Dennis Lavelle. That guy, I learned more from him and still apply more from what we learned from him and what we do on a daily basis. So for us here, I think certain programs will always have a national brand. And the key to any program, right, usually falls in a 3 kind of pronged approach, right? Talent acquisition, player development, and personnel use. I believe what you said, no one goes back anymore in college football, and we don't think that way. I in no way, shape, or form want to go backwards and, hey, like this was done, or when I played here, that's never part of any conversation. The fact that I've had the opportunity to be away for 25 years, different stops, all of them rebuilds. One already was established well enough where that's not a rebuild. But sustaining a program at that level still is a great lesson. It's like getting a PhD in some of this stuff. It's really important to know that this is all about taking Miami into the future. That's why the contract was laid out the way it was. That's why into that we tied a facility that's going to be second to none, which has been missing for a long time.
Right.
I mean, this was, as much as I wanted to come back, I could not from a business standpoint until it was obvious and factual that Miami was really serious about heading into this decade at the level that everybody else is in the country, the top level teams. And every single budget line, everything is itemized to the T for the long haul, that's the way it's going to be. And that's the only way it can be and should be. So all those things combined, plus the area, you feel the vibe in the city, you feel the vibe within the building. We don't BS each other in here. I don't BS this football team or our coaches. I'm an offensive lineman, man. I mean, I was born and raised to be a worker and do things a certain way, and we don't believe in BS. And in terms of any noise that there might be, I don't know, and I don't think our team, our players, the people that we bring into the building, I don't think they'll ever care. Whoever does has got to go. I'm talking about here or anywhere else. I don't live in that world. I live in that world where you saw, where we're up at the crack of dawn, beyond that, and stay till late at night. That's the world that we live in. That's the only world we're going to stay in. It's a great group of guys. It's a great, I would say, foundation plus one of what this place is to be. And when you sign the top class in your program's history, and you're trending to do it again and top that one, well, now it starts looking like the teams that have really dominated college football for the past several years.
The mentality you're talking about is atypical. Most people don't think like that. Mm-hmm. And therefore, when last season gets here and then it starts to go downhill, the typical person looks at it in maybe a result-oriented fashion, and they say, oh, they're not going to finish with a good record. This season's terrible. It's a wash. You don't get to think like that because you've got hopefully decade plus down the road to where this is the here and now, but here's where we're headed. And it struck me now when you were doing some radio last year, even during the season, and you were just totally unfiltered. I don't think I'd heard you that way publicly, maybe privately, but not publicly. And you just ripped the Band-Aid off and you were like brutally honest about what is and what has to change, and make no bones about it, we're going to get it there. When did you start to feel it from a result standpoint go a little bit south last year? Mm-hmm. And what was it like in the building around here? Because all we know is what it looked like from the outside.
Sure. No, I think whenever you have a season like that, it is tough. You know, I like to think about it this way. For the last 10 years, I've been part of either a national championship staff, a national championship game, a Rose Bowl game, a conference title. And then for the first time in a long time, was back to rebuild mode. And you had to go through the painful steps that you cannot skip, and they are hard. They are tough. And a job like this, at least at the beginning, is for tough-minded people. It really is. Because people are gonna, I had a boss say, people are gonna show their ass, right? I don't think I could say that, kind of, whatever.
We'll allow it.
So people are gonna show themselves when the blank hits the fan. And the truth always comes out in those situations. So I look back at every single one of these opportunities that we have, whether it be at Rutgers, getting beat 80-7 at Virginia,
that happened.
West Virginia.
People forget that happened.
80-7. I'll never forget the fake punt right before halftime to further emphasize at West Virginia. I'll never forget being here in '97 as a GA, and rebuilding the program. I'll never forget going to FIU, a team that had lost almost 20 straight games, and having to start from scratch there on a team that was inheriting a 5-year probation. Like, it just takes certain types of people to do that, and surrounding yourself with certain types of people. And if there's any crack in them, people are going to feel it, right? So I don't know, maybe we're very fortunate. We had great upbringings. I credit the parents, the mentors of all the young men and women in our program that are resilient and understand that you got to do this. Like, unfortunately, if you're not to a certain level, you need this so that reality is very clear that we have got to build from here. Now we just got to just shut our mouths and go to work. There's nothing there's no other way around it. You just got to go do it.
No one ever, at least in my observation, no one ever takes over a program and then hires a staff and then everyone's just there for the first 3 years. You may have a nucleus, but it always feels like there's some turnover. You guys had turnover at the coordinator position, you had a chunk of your staff, which is normal, percentage-wise. You look across the sport, that's how it always happens. But I know each situation is unique. So you're talking about filtration and sort of putting the water pressure against the dam and finding out where the cracks are. From the outside, all we see is at the end of the year, staff moves on. In the inside, sometimes you may know 2 weeks in.
Sure.
Probably need to address that down the road. Or maybe it's late November, probably need to address that. But you don't usually do it during the season. You just got to make do until the end of the year. What's that process like? Of knowing in the back of your mind, all right, I'm taking notes now, but I can't really probably address that until December, because that is obviously not an ideal situation to be in.
Sure, and I think you owe it to a staff to give them enough time to at least show something, unless it's just to the point where you know it's no longer fixable, or that there is no improvement to be made, or you're in part of the season where you could only hurt yourself even more, even if you know that it's not going to work. And I do believe this. I believe in respect. And sometimes you know a staff member is not going to work out. And sometimes they have an opportunity that might be better for their family. And sometimes it's time for them to move on. And at least philosophically, I believe in, if that's the case, you always give someone an opportunity to find another opportunity and go get it. You know, I don't think there's I don't think there's any benefit of a public termination just so it's out there when someone can maybe find another job when a move was going to be made anyways. You know, you want to give people an opportunity to continue their career. Not sometimes things don't fit. You know, we had coaches that had some pretty strong accolades, right? And all of a sudden it didn't work out. They moved on somewhere else. So I don't think anyone or everyone becomes a bad coach overnight. Sometimes things just don't fit, or the timing isn't right, or the personnel doesn't fit the scheme, and there's not enough adaptability or enough pieces to plug in. Every single case is different. I do try to handle those respectfully, while at the same time just finding whatever is best for the team and not compromising that part. If something has to be done on the spot and swiftly because it is the best for the team, then you got to do what you got to do.
What you're describing is a different world, but it's not too dissimilar sometimes to what we may deal with in the production world. Okay. You may bring in a guy who you want to be a coordinating producer, and he's got all the boxes checked on his resume. It just, for whatever reason, it's not a good fit. Now, in my world, what you'll probably do is along the lines of what you said. Probably give them a heads up, not that they don't already feel it, but you give them a heads up. Hey, probably in your best interest, go ahead and put your feelers out. In your world, you would have an agent to do that through, whereas in our world, you're just having to elbow your way in yourself. Is that how you handle it? I mean, if you were to start feeling things going downhill, do you sort of wink, wink, nudge, nudge, hey, this is probably the direction we're going, or do you not even need to do that? Do guys just naturally feel it and understand probably on borrowed time here?
No, you tell them respectfully. You know, you don't hold back. You know, I don't think you make it personal, because it never is. It shouldn't be, unless someone makes it personal, or in the case someone egregiously, you know, violates policy and culture and ethics, and you got to go at that really, really hard. But if not, you really try to always stay as professional as possible and leave out the personal part.
So as we're talking right here, we got like alarms going off in the background, lightning in the area. And what's interesting is up until pretty recently down here, that would have just meant, all right, practice is over. Done. Now we're sitting in an indoor, and yet we've also got ground about to break on new facilities that are even brighter and shinier than what we're in right now. Now I know if you had your way, we just put on hard hats and go pick up a shovel and let's get it done, because you don't get the red tape and I don't get the red tape either. When this project's finally done, what does that do to Miami football?
Well, number one, Jimmy Johnson had to deal with somebody, because it would lightning everywhere except on that practice field. Because we never had a single practice canceled in all that time. We haven't had the same deal or that same benefit. So, yeah, this is well underway. Groundbreaking should be any day now. It is a fully funded and laid out project. It's the nicest facility I've ever been a part of, helping to design. And it gives us everything and then some. It also gives you the ability to keep expanding the operation as well. And it's a necessity. You know, I think for years prospects have just flown by and over Miami, because, and it's not just having a nice building, it's a nice facility, a modern facility with things that help increase performance.
It's functionality.
No doubt. And you know what it is? It screams investment. You're invested in my son. You know, you are going to do everything possible to make them elite. So I think that part's it's gonna really, not besides turning heads, it changes the mindset and the perspective of, okay, Miami really is completely invested in, and that's just part of it, because it includes an expansion of the indoor and some other pieces. It is a monstrosity of a project, and it's I'm looking forward to it. We could, you know, you got a crew here, man. We could start knocking down some things and moving a tractor over if we can. You know?
Well, I mean, you open the building, and this is what we bring in here. We appreciate it. So there's a word that you like to use a lot, and the word is creature.
Creature.
And maybe when you came here, there were some creatures in the building, not nearly as many as you would have wanted. Mm-hmm. I've been down here about 72 hours by the time this airs, and I've seen some high school creatures walk through the building. And without mentioning specifics, obviously, mm-hmm. but sticking to generalities, I know that you got big weekends coming up, and this time of year now, it just used to be vacation time. Right. And now it's like the heart of recruiting season because the way the calendar's changed. Everybody says they take recruiting seriously. I don't think, I mean, I've been around the Georgias, the Bamas, and you've been around the Bama program. You did it at Oregon. It looks like it's happening again here. I mean, how razor sharp is the focus day to day on recruiting and talent acquisition?
It is. It's part of, it's a way of life at this time of year, and it really is, it's an everyday thing. You know, I had one head coach say, you know, it's like brushing your teeth and combing your hair. If you don't do it every day, you ain't gonna look very good. You know, you've got to do it all the time. So, but I've had good mentors as it relates to recruiting, and I just believe in it. I really want to know and get to know the people that are gonna be on this team inside that locker room. But you also got to combine it with player development and your own locker room. And we do. You know, we split up the day where we're spending time with our guys, we're spending time on scheme, we're spending time on upcoming opponents, and we're spending time on recruiting. Just the days are a little bit longer in the summer than they used to be, and there's the weekends you're working. There is no, hey, Friday comes around and there's some time off. You've got official visits, you've got unofficial visits, and everyone's fighting for these visits. So whenever you can get the guys on campus, you want to get them there and make sure you're available.
This whole thing you're talking about, fighting to get visits, is frankly not something that gets talked about a lot. I mean, everybody talks about you're battling Clemson or Georgia or Tennessee for a high 4-star linebacker. They don't even talk about battling to get the visit. What goes into battling just to get guys on campus, and how well does it play into your hands that you're in Miami, Florida?
They have to meet certain criteria. Besides just the stuff we see on film, the background check, he's got to be a real one off the field, and he's got to possess the characteristics that we're looking for in terms of work ethic, toughness, character. Everyone has their stuff. You know, that's nothing, you know, extraordinary, you know, or anything that's new. But you have to make sure it fits, and you also have to make sure there's a legitimate interest, especially now, right? There's an unlimited visit, you know, new little addition to the NCAA rules, so guys can visit as many times as they want, wherever they want. You want to make sure that you're never just a waste visit, because you're subjected to 56 plus 6 left over. And, you know, usually the NCAA, at least last year, they were able to add some more at the end. So you still have to be selective as to when you get them, but you got to fight for them. And everybody wants the same guys, right? And then there's a couple guys that pop, and certainly those guys, when they do pop, it's the day and age of social media. Everybody finds out. Do you remember the days? I mean, back then, there was no, what's that little device? The old navigation, the Magellan.
Yes. Oh, the Magellan, yeah.
The old Magellan, right? So even before that, there were just maps, right? And there was word of mouth, and there was a newspaper. And so you had to go and put in time and watch a guy practice, right? And you had to make sure when you called that school, the coach happened to be in the office because there were no cell phones, and you want to make sure you got there for a practice or for a workout. So those days are gone. You could secretly find an absolute stud, and no one else knew about it. Now, the moment someone's offered, it's, you know, blessed to be offered by, right? I mean,
you're talking about the computerization essentially of recruiting.
Yes.
And you're talking about, it's like people talk about the computerization of medical records and what it did. Mm-hmm. Well, that's wonderful. But in your world, I mean, that's why you used to have so many diamonds in the rough. That's why there used to be these stories of kids that weren't on like the parade All-American list. Well, it's because they came from a high school with 56 in their graduating class, and they're from like the backwoods of Louisiana, and the LSU coaches knew about him, but no one else did.
That's right.
You're talking about the Everglades down here. The Miami coaches may have known about him. Howard Schnellenberger may have known about it, but no one else did. And it's almost like if you knew the back roads back then in your territory and you were in a really hotbed for recruiting, you gave yourself a leg up. And now, like PJ Fleck, the head coach at Minnesota, knows about the guys in South Florida that you know about. And so it's not that maybe someone's on a different playing field. It's like the playing field's more level, and now you just got to go win recruiting wars. And like I said earlier, a lot of folks look at recruiting and they say, oh, we want to go recruit South Florida. Everyone comes down here.
Right.
And I've said on this show for a long time, everyone else is focused on like an expanded playoff to try and even it out and inject parity. And I've looked at the teams that are dominating the playoff, and they all come down here and get a ton of talent because the in-state schools, and Miami's been included, had not been keeping them at home. So from my math, and it could be a little shoddy, but from my math, you just keep your guys home, not all of them. You don't even have to get all of them, but you keep more guys home, and all of a sudden, you landing one of them is also Ohio State not landing one of them.
That's right.
And it's really crazy what, over the course of 2 or 3 cycles, that can do for parity and competitive balance in college football. That's not even a question, by the way. I'm just tossing a statement your way.
I think you're spot on. I mean, Reuben Bain coming to Miami is a big deal, you know?
He would not have been here 2 cycles ago, is my unprofessional opinion.
You know, Ray Joseph. Ray was committed somewhere else within the conference, you know, before the staff arrived and just went at it hard because he's a dynamic football player. Nigel Lee Kelly is like that. Damari Brown, right up the road. He was headed, you know, towards some other schools, maybe in another conference. Mark Fletcher, you know, you saw him today. I mean, these are Wesley Bassant. I mean, I could go on and on. These guys, they're game changers. And like you mentioned, if you recruit the right guys, right, it helps you build a program, you have success. If you miss on that right guy, well, you better recruit a guy that's able to diffuse him when you play that team. If you recruit the wrong guy, that guy beats you every single day, not just once a year. So it's about still getting the right guys. Like, we had a study in looking at the national championship teams here, and some were just South Florida laden. They really were. And then you looked at the 2001 team, and you realized, you know, the left tackle was from New Jersey, and the left guard was from Pennsylvania, and the center from, he's going to claim he's from Canada, but he's right there. He's outside of Canada. He's over in Detroit. And the right guard was from Iran, and the quarterback was from California. And all of a sudden, that team was built differently, but it was the right guys, you know, because it's like once they got here, they became part of the culture. So there's a little bit of give and take there. And as much as anything else, as making sure you keep local talent home, it's got to be the right local talent. And when you go outside, you better get the right talent as well. You got to have the right people that have the right mindset, because if not, that can hurt you more than anything. That can hurt you more than missing on a good player.
We sat down with Shannon Dawson for like an hour the other day. Felt like about 20 minutes, but he walked us through some of the spring game, and we specifically looked at Tyler Van Dyke. And it's obviously pivotal to have him coming back for another year. It's obviously pivotal that when we were watching these offensive linemen out here work out earlier today, a number of them that will probably start weren't here last year.
Right.
And so keeping him upright is really important. But what's funny is Shannon Dawson comes in from Houston, and everyone thinks air raid. And I asked him, hey, coming out of spring, what stands out to you the most? And he said, I think we're going to be able to run the ball a whole lot better. And that's not the sentence that you would expect to come out of an air raid guy's mouth. But then again, he also said, I mean, what does air raid mean? Really, what does it mean? You're talking about spread offense. What does spread offense really mean? There's so many different concepts to go into it. But to win at the point of attack and to be able to run the ball, when you think about the Mario Cristobal football philosophy, what does the ideal offense look like? Aside from scoring more points than the other team, how do you go about doing it?
Well, you got to play with speed and power, and you got to be efficient, and you got to be able to control the line of scrimmage, go through people, around people, over the top of people. You got to be able to go fast when it's time to go fast. You got to be able to slow it down when it's time to slow it down. But you've got to be able to take control of the game, and it starts up front. Then you really have to assess your talent, which I think Coach Dawson and the offensive staff did a great job of doing, to see what can you really do well. To be adaptable enough to know that every year's team is going to be different, and find out what they can do so you could practice that, get good at it, and then complement it with all your other stuff. You know, he might come from the air raid tree, but he is a very, very diverse play caller. His menu is very extensive. he has done what a lot of the air raid guys have done. They've gone around and they have taken in certain parts of the run game at different spots, and he does it and calls it and formations it extremely, extremely well. He understands backfield sets, he understands formations, the boundary as opposed to the field, how to affect, support players, the back end, and how to help the quarterback in the RPO world. I mean, he's an absolute stud. And what he does fits us really well because he understands that we're always going to recruit some really big, powerful offensive linemen. We're always going to have a strong running game. We have a talented quarterback and some talented young guys, and we're starting to get some legitimate speed outside. He's going to combine them all. He did that. Our guys love him because he's a great person. And when they sit with him, they can tell he knows what he's talking about. He made them better. These guys had a lot of success in the spring, and they know that we're going to push them even harder in the fall.
What were the things when you just did that brutal self-assessment of the entire last year before you guys went into spring?
Mm-hmm.
There are tons of areas of focus. Every position group has areas of focus, but team overall, defense, offense, special teams, what were the core hammer home points? These are non-negotiables. These are where we got to get a lot better, or we're going to suffer the same fate this next fall.
Up front, we struggled to run the football, and we struggled to protect the quarterback at times. And again, I would never blame a certain player or whatnot. You got to put on everybody, on our entire organization. We got to scheme it better. You got to get better personnel. You got to develop better in the weight room. It didn't look like what. It's not what we do, but we have to own it because that's what we ended up playing like. That's how we ended up coaching it. So for us, it started up front. That was a complete non-negotiable on both sides of the ball. We had to make sure that from a physicality standpoint, that our second level defenders had to be knockback tacklers. Felt like, when it was a short yardage situation, we weren't getting enough push on the offensive side. We were getting knocked back a little bit on the defensive side, and we were more of a drag down, tackling operation than a knockback tackling operation. And then to continue to, I would say, just be a little bit more complex, on the back end, to make sure that when teams got in certain alignments, certain formations, that we weren't as predictable, to be able to give our guys a chance and not always be, in similar looks. Now, I get it. That's part of year one. You've got to be a little bit vanilla so you can get to stuff that's part of your base, foundation to get that installed. But I think the diversity, the multiplicity, I should say, of Coach Guidry and what he does, as well as Coach Dawson, is going to be hard to prepare for. They're humble dudes, but they grind, and how they do things, their explanations are easy to learn, but I think hard to defend. Our guys have enjoyed them so far.
What motivates you professionally and personally? What motivates you?
Oh man, I've always been motivated by competition. I've always loved it, man. I credit my parents. I don't know what they did. I mean, I'm the kid at, when they had you at church and, they tell you to pray and you're squeezing your hands and you're got your eyes real tight.
You want to be the most white knuckle prayer in the building.
Well, when you're in there, you're doing that, and then your mom's like, "Wow, you're a good kid. What are you praying for?" I'm praying for the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Hurricanes to win. It's like whack backhand, Like I've always loved it. I've always lived and died for football. I love football because I love football. That's my football why. People have their why. I love everything about it. The discipline, the toughness, the way it'll knock you back, knock you down, and make you really get back up and really go forward and have the support of your team sometimes, and sometimes not. Sometimes you got to figure it out on your own. So I'm all about it. I'm all about the life-changing opportunity that it is for these guys. And it really is. And if I wish you could come with me today as we go into the inner city with about 50 players and we coach and host these camps, because you're going to see at least 50 superstars, 50 future NFL superstars out there that they don't look 6 and 7 years old. They're moving fast and they're playing strong, and the pride in the community. Well, man, this is where I was born and raised. Okay, this is not just a shirt that, hey, this is the next job, and here's a shirt you got to wear when you're on camera. This thing is in the blood, and is that part of the motivation? Oh, hell yeah, it always will be. But there's everything to work about, and there's not much to talk about as it relates to that. We got to go to work, and every day we change things in a positive manner a little bit more and more. So anyways, it's another tangent for you right there. But today, grassroots recruiting, I want those guys when they're this tall. We're in hurricane gear, so when they're this tall, I'm gonna do all these official visits, man. They just come right over.
Come on over here. What was funny is you guys had a building full of young kids in here yesterday, all the way from like first grade to sixth grade. And right as you were walking down that staircase, you said, "Hey, the first grader's okay, but there's some fifth graders down there. Have you seen that fifth grader over there?" And it's funny how, I mean, I'm looking at you and I'm kind of laughing, and you do have a smile on your face, but it's one of those serious smiles where, no, you can tell that kid right there is going to be good. It's going to be like half a decade from now before he's ever on our radar or able to visit here. But it's funny how you can see some of that stuff really early on, because there were some legitimate, like, elementary school, middle school athletes in here yesterday.
Oh, yeah. Down here, football is life. It is. You know, you talked to Shannon Dawson, and I'm glad you did, and I'll tell you why. It's like Miami with an exciting offense is a really powerful thing and a powerful brand. There are so many unbelievable athletes down here, and they've been screaming for this for a long, long time, and that's why Shannon and that hire is so important. He brings that explosive offense and the details that go with it, while at the same time having the NFL development aspect that goes with that, so that guys know, hey, I'm just not in a high-octane college offense. I'm in an offense that's going to teach me professional concepts and help me develop. And the amount of momentum and excitement that is stirring up and will stir up as we get better and better, and we got to prove it on the field, and the confidence that you build with that, the trust you build with that, I mean, that's very powerful. I'm glad you got to sit in there with him. I mean, that parlays into, right, a great defensive class, because great players want to play with great players.
Well, you just went and raided Louisiana, essentially. You just went and found the best two dudes you could find from Louisiana, DC, OC. Let's go to work. It's a unique culture in Louisiana, too. I know you're not from there, but when those guys sort of get in a room together, I've witnessed it before, when those Louisianans get in a room together, they can go. You just kind of sit back. You just kind of put your feet up on the desk. You don't understand like 30% of the words, but it's okay. You just kind of pick up things as you go along. But those two dudes, I mean, I don't think most people realize they're both from the same state, and that we're not talking about like New Orleans either. We're talking about rural Louisiana, and it's always funny because, in a sense, there's this blue-collar kind of culture from there that you see from certain parts of this city as well.
Well, it's kind of like we talked about, great players want to play with great players. They did know each other a little bit, and when we hired one, the other one wanted to come right away, and that was really neat. You know, I mean, at the end of the day, these guys are really, they're high-level professionals. They're great people. I mean, they're people you want to hang out with. They're people you're going to trust your own son with, you know, and they get after it now. I mean, these guys they're ball junkies, and you got to have that. And if you walk the hallways of the University of Miami football, the building, what you're going to see is a reflection of the city. You know, if you've had a chance to walk around the city, this is the most diverse city maybe in the world. We come in all kinds of shapes, sizes, and colors, ethnicities, and language. And if you walk upstairs, you'll see American Samoa in one office, right? You'll see Miami, Florida in the other one. Like you mentioned, you'll see Louisiana. You'll see North and South Carolina. You'll see people from all over the place. And like here in this city, being raised here, like that is really cool. And even as a father, it was important for me to get my family here so they could experience that.
Yeah.
That's really important, man. The world should be like that, right? I mean, I'm not going to get into some type of philosophical speech here, but I think that's important. I think that's important for your team. These guys, one day, are going to be in the workforce or in an NFL locker room that is as diverse as it gets as well. And it needs to be something that they feel not only comfortable with, but that they can excel in, right? And they feel that they can enhance. So that's all part of Miami.
All right, so pretend like you and I are not going to talk again before you guys play in week one. What can this team be this year? You've seen spring so far, and we got some summer conditioning happen. We're a couple of months away from fall camp. What can this team be this year?
You know, and I know that's not an ask for a prediction, but it almost kind of treads on those lines.
Sure. Yeah, if you want to go over that cliff, I'll gladly stand back and let you go over the cliff.
No, it's polished that we never do. I know that this team is getting on course to what we want to build it to be. It's not a cop-out of an answer.
Right.
I just don't get into that. I know we all know what Miami can be, and we all know what Miami should be. And we know internally the steps that have to be taken for it to get there. We've taken a really significant step this offseason, And honestly, we just got to shut our mouths and go to work. I don't, like everything else outside of that, you know, like for us, it's an honor to have you here. It really is. Your whole crew here. We thank you for that. We just, like I told you before, I'm the most boring human being on earth, man. I don't do much. I'm not in attracting attention. This crew right here, knowing where Miami has to go, all the things that we're doing, the enhanced nutritional aspect, the sports science guys, the mental health specialists that are in the building, the staff, the analysts, the type of recruiting that we've done, the type of body types that are in the building right now, the progress is very strong and it's tangible, it's significant, and we got to keep working our reality into existence. We just got to work, brother. You're going to see a hard-working, resilient, tough team that needs to keep working and keep getting better. And the results, that has to be proven on the field. I'm not even going to talk about what that has to be like. We know the end game. We got to work to get there.
There's an incredible energy in the building. We go to a lot of them, and so there's a lot of basis for comparison. You're in a bubble, actually. You've been out in the world as a staffer, but you're here in Coral Gables every day. We're all across the country, and trust me when I say there's unique energy in this building. And so I almost relish the fact that, you know, anytime we do a segment on Miami, we got some folks who believe in them in the comment section. We got some folks who doubt in the comment section, which is college football. That's all it's ever been. But we appreciate you opening your doors to us. Staff treated us like family. I think some of us may just not leave. You got enough open offices in the building. We just hang out here.
Well, you guys feel because you're tough. You know,
A
like
lot of
I got
us
a chance to watch
are.
this
A lot of
crew.
us are, yeah.
Right, look at the crew. They're all flexing right now because they all went in there, they grinded out a workout. They got some, like, to be in Miami in any way, shape, or form, if you're in the sports world, you got to be tough. And if you're affected by the external stuff, you got no chance. You shouldn't even be around.
What's amazing is when you go in that weight room,
Yeah.
you've got the records on the wall. Some of them are recent. Some of them are from the 80s.
That's right.
Some of those guys have not had their records touched since they were walking around here in the 80s and 90s. And it's really wild to think about the dudes who walked around here before you had advanced nutrition, before you had sports science. No one even put those two words together.
That's right.
And there were some dudes who just came from South Florida in many cases who were born like that and then came here and grinded and ate like a dozen scrambled eggs in the morning and went to work. And there's some impressive numbers in there.
Well, you see, there's a lot of guys up in there. You see Ed Reed and Edgar and James, Dan Morgan, Bryant McKinney. You'll see some hanging in the rafters here. That class, those two classes, that was the class that came about after a 5-7 season. Typically, you know, I like to think that you do your best work as a competitor when your back's against the wall, and you wanna come out of there, and you want to be not only successful but significant for your teammates, for the people around you, for your community. Okay, I'm telling you, the Miami being a difference maker in my life and the things that go with it and this community is the reason why we left all that behind to come here and work this back to what it needs to be by going forward. And I think those guys, and these guys are here very often, you know, and they don't talk about, hey, back in the day. I think that's, when you do that, I think it doesn't help anybody.
Right.
What they do is they help these guys think forward. How are you gonna do it? You know, what's your blueprint? How are you getting extra work? What type of extra time are you spending around the coaches, watching film, rounding up your teammates, making sure they're taking care of their bodies? So that's like the infusion right now that's going on in the building.
Mario Cristobal, we appreciate it, brother.
Appreciate you, man.